Hello again everyone, I hope you're having a good day, and again thanks to everyone for stopping by and supporting the channel by just watching and leaving likes on the last video. I'm still busy with game dev and doing lots of stuff at work with my personal life, but I'm still gonna upload videos on YouTube and do it in a way that I feel is best for me and the channel. So thanks again for everything. So recently, a topic here on YouTube within the game dev community that I've been seeing greatly are videos about whether game dev tutorials put out by others are good or if they are bad. And with this, I decided to make my own video on my thoughts about this, and while I understand the points of both perspectives, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's important to note that both sides do have their points, and it is important to remember that everyone's circumstance is different and their personal lives are not being put into account on these situations on how you learn. What I mean by this is that there are so many factors such as times, goals, and the way that people learn. This is just a few out of the many more possibilities, and you can't really force people to learn game dev by simply just learning how to program, as there are many different aspects and routes that you can achieve with this. Now, I'm not saying that learning the absolute basics of coding before starting is a bad thing, but saying that it is mandatory for people to start by learning the fundamentals, going through a programming course first or through some forum not specific to game dev is an awful way to begin for specific people, in my opinion. It is best for the person not to do something complex either as a start, because that would be a waste of time, but to instead do something simple that they can follow along with and learn at a preferred pace. The way that I learned coding was that I did some starter C# development courses a few years ago and learned the basics through YouTube tutorials of what comes with that. I did that with a mix of some Unity 2D tutorials, which has helped me learn the possibilities of what can be done while learning how the code works, understanding how it works, and the different ways the same code can be reused or modified to make something that exists or something new. This was the way that I learned to be the best for me. Now, the way that I learned was the best for me, but it may not be best for everyone. I took a route where I did a mix of learning what the programming languages and a mix of what Unity is to see how things would play out. Having the availability to go in different routes when it comes to learning is best, and is what will drive the most interest in the game dev space, especially for newcomers. At the starting stage of the game development, it's important to find something that really interests you and motivates you to see if it's the right thing for you to do, and to dig deeper at a good rate as you go. With motivation, this will generate more interest to make something more complex over time and eventually learn more complicated versions of code or of what you are working on. The way that I learn personally is through visual learning and repetition. To describe this, watching someone code something would give me a general foundation to follow, and if I want to do something more specific, looking up an answer online of how someone resolved a problem or something similar would be something that I would do. Looking through the Unity script references is something that has definitely helped me, but would have been something extremely overwhelming and confusing, especially at the start when I was just trying to get some code just to work. Some people at the start want to see that they can get something to work and do not care about going through some boot camp or programming course. Some will start with those courses, which are great, but others that don't should never be told that they are doing it the wrong way. Even if they go along while using tutorials, eventually there will be a point where the person will start to remember what it is that they are using and will use these newly learned programming techniques to solve problems. Afterwards, they will use those skills to solve potentially new problems that will in turn let people learn more about what it is that they are working on, and do this on a loop, repeatedly gaining more and more experience each time they do this. With this, the most important thing to note is that programming is all about problem solving, and that there is not just one right answer, but multiple. This is whether it is taught through a YouTube tutorial, a programming forum, a class, or an online course that they may take. It's like saying that there should only be one specific way to cook, or that to exercise, or that you're even required to play a game with the most challenging set of controls to get good at before even getting on the first level. I doubt many people would play a game with the most difficult set of controls when starting, so why should it be like that for game dev? With this information, some may say that people may just copy code from YouTube tutorials and just use that to create a game and say that it's a bad way of learning how to code. In their defense, there is nothing wrong with that, as people who are first learning will be able to follow along great with that, and over time with that code, it can 100% be repurposed for something else, or even improved upon to something more efficient, as the person will have this library of past information from previous games they've made to make something more complex and interesting in the future. Now, I understand that if you are stuck only copying from these videos, this may be an issue, But with this, those people coding, if they reached a certain level of experience, which they will at some point, they'll start going to other resources, potentially websites or the Unity documentation or even Stacks Overflow, or even learn themselves to see if they can find something more specific, or they're just interested in what other types of ways of being more efficient is. And this of course starts with people going over what it is that they know and knowing themselves what it is that they need to do next and figuring out how to get there. The journey for learning how to do game dev or really anything in life is not something straightforward and is something different for everyone. Another thing to note is that most of the time, lots of code is repeated across similar projects and none of it is truly original, just like most games out there at the moment. Games have slight differences but are more or less the same with genres, with one specific mechanic that makes it greatly stand out and shines, or does a few things differently, and that's what makes it unique enough. Forcing someone to learn through a set way is something that should never be done, as it can harm someone's interest in anything really. With this, I hope that some people support and grew to understand that there is more than just one way to learn game dev, and that having to go through a restrictive way of learning is not the best way. It should be up to the person to learn how they think it's best and will help them the most. It's always important to remember to take things one step at a time at a comfortable rate, and eventually you will get better by just practicing, staying motivated, and having the passion for these things.